All right, I'll call the meeting to order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Alexander. Here. Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Johnson. Trustee Renucci.
Here.
Trustee Smalley. Here. Trustee Wisniewski. Here. Thank you.
All right, citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of a publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. With that being said, would anybody like to speak during citizen participation? Hit the button and state your name and address. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Steve Cool, 2905 North Shore Drive. Just wanted to ask or make sure some questions get addressed when you talk about the impoundment area restoration. So I see things look like they're going according to what the final kind of plan was that was voted on, and I personally am glad to see that. I guess the question that we have is because of, you know, how fast weeds grow and all that kind of stuff. What kind of plans are there for finishing the edges of the stream, finishing the edges of the pools, so that it can be mowed up to closely and so forth, and so that it's kind of easy to maintain? I'm assuming that there's going to be something done for that, but I just want to make sure that that kind of question is addressed along the way. And I don't know if it's possible, but when there is discussion of it by the board, sometimes I know for an agenda item you will open up the possibility for people from who are present to ask questions or to make comments along the way with things. If there's a possibility to do that tonight, I would appreciate that too. I don't know if it'll be necessary, but just in case there are questions from our end who live there that come up, that we can maybe raise them or address them or make comments if things aren't known about what's going on. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else that would like to speak during citizen participation? Anyone else that would like to speak during citizen participation? One last time. Anybody that would like to speak during citizen participation? No, then I will close citizen participation. Move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second will approve all items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately. One thing to comment on, the item number 4, the chamber is requesting that we waive the $150 late fee for submitting application less than the 45 days prior to the event.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the request for the waiver.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to mention it that I think it would be about time to ask them to try to get it in early enough. And we've been pretty good about okaying late stuff.
Any other discussion?
How many times has the chamber been late with things like this, Lori?
We haven't really been enforcing it since COVID, so this is the first year, so not.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to miscellaneous business. Consider approval of affidavit of correction for parcel number PA415-80003 and PA415-80004, FHA number 7282.22.
I'll move to accept the affidavit of correction as drafted.
I have a question.
Any discussion?
Yes, sorry. This picture that we have that we're reading or looking at, was that presented by our planner?
Yes.
Okay, could I ask that we get a little better perspective of where this is located and where it is in relationship to any roads or anything, or, I mean, I'm just looking at two lots, and I have no idea what the impact is of what road it's off of, or where, you know, to me, it would just it would be a little nicer to know where it is, and in relation to where our village is. That's all.
Talk to the planner about that.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of Level Up East Troy Investment LLC Development. Consideration of, recommendation from Planning Commission to approve condominium plat with conditions, and consideration of development agreement with East Troy Investment LLC.
Make a motion to approve the condo plat based on the general and specific conditions listed within the staff report dated August 4th, 2022, and that the condo doc should include the reference deed restriction or remove all references to the same.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Dan.
Hang on. We didn't approve this.
Sorry, you didn't, include
Just the condo. I'll make a motion to approve the development agreement with East Troy Investments LLC.
Second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to dam redevelopment update. Tim, Jason, Andy?
So tonight, obviously Tim Lynch is here, and we do have Andy Keys from RLP, to kind of just update us on things and try and address any questions that the board may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Tim or for Andy?
I was just curious when they think we might see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Kind of in our schedule that's been spec'd out, right, Andy? Yeah. Looks like it's something that's actually attainable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to rush anything. I just wanted to get some idea of people, you know, are asking.
So, real quick, so Andy did submit a schedule about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. It showed a completion date of September 25th. If you look at a lot of what's on the schedule, I would say since that time, he's moved back ahead of that schedule. So we are progressing towards meeting that deadline. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So we're gonna try to do.
There's still a lot of restoration to do. Obviously, there's a lot of planting to do. Jason and I went out and met with, Andy Nelson, who's the biologist, the consultant on both vegetation and the fisheries and whatnot. Had a good meeting today talking about some of that. Some about the restoration, what we kind of can expect. Some of the plants that are growing up there. One of the really most invasive ones that appear to be invasive to, I'll say, an untrained biologist, actually is an annual that's going to actually fall away and will actually help promote some of the prairie grass. So some good meetings talking through some of that. I don't know if, Andy, if you want to give an update on your schedule, if I misspoke, or?
No, the schedule's probably somewhat accurate, but we're trying to push it up a little bit as we have other people available to come and do more restoration work as we're finishing other jobs up. The crew that's currently on site's gonna stay there until the job is complete. We're a little ahead with, the pond excavation. We thought we'd be another week behind on that, but we're, trying to get that wrapped up so we can get that to dry out, so we can grade those areas out and get them restored. So as we progress here, we're gonna keep doing EMAT along the shoreline and then seeding, as you've seen happen out there now.
Regarding the budget, I see the numbers here right now. Are we gonna hit that 100%? Are we gonna come in and under it at all? What are your thoughts there, Tim?
Yeah, we'll hit the 100% for sure. I expect that some of the items, will be slightly over, but, within, I'd say 5 to 10%. Just because I know we're gonna have some additional erosion mats and additional restoration from the areas that we expanded previously, but trending very much towards being real close to budget.
Can you break out when time comes, can you break out the overages or the extras or the things we added as opposed from the original estimate, so we know where things went awry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Tim, I was just looking here, figure 6 in your memo about the potential wetlands creep, where is that?
That is, so if you look at figure 5, what you have there, look at the very bottom right hand, to the right of the stream. If you were just to go a little bit actually further away, you'd probably get to it. You get that little kind of green patch right there, where the cursor is right now? I would say it's a little bit further west, so down and also south of there.
It's on the edge of the former shoreline. It seems to be a series of springs.
Constantly flowing. Water, we actually found about 3 areas that are flowing from the south woods into the current channel now, that we can't stop. It's actually a constant flow. We tried damming them off and covering them up and that, but we can't. So we've actually made new channels for the water to flow freely into the current stream and added some riprap in some of those areas. So this is another one that's on the far west side that flows pretty good, and there's already a depression there, but it might be nicer based upon whatever Andy had to say about enhancing it. Because what you have now is you have a couple of ponds and some flowing water. This would be a separate habitat for animals and species versus what you have in the current channel.
We did talk to Andy Nelson about this today a little bit. One of his points was, hey, this is actually, as it sits now, is actually a pretty nice habitat. Talking about northern pike as far as a fishery. He said that if he would do anything, the only thing he would do probably would be to dig one small area, maybe a third of it, and get there. But otherwise, it's actually a really nice fish coming in there.
Is that the $4,700 request?
So the $4,700 request, though, is to essentially scrape the entire thing, which I think we're scaling back, correct? Based on today's discussion with Andy.
Based on that discussion, we would do less than the full amount, because we had talked about scraping the entire thing to get some additional depth for the whole area. What Andy's saying is, hey, some of this is nice to have some that, but also have just a deeper pocket to help some of the fish.
I did receive some pictures from residents that live in the area that identify that where it is supposed to be stream bed, it's extremely shallow. Are we going to do something as far as increasing the depth there?
We talked about that too. There's one area that in particular we were looking at today. I think what we're going to do is we've got some of these additional rocks we're talking about, and we'd like to is in there to channelize and make the channel grow up in those sections. Kind of natural stream fill the sediment in behind it, having to wait and dig it out, let the channel go on. Also give it some additional.
Where approximately is that?
You can kind of see it at the very, if you look at the very lower left-hand corner, where it comes into the area that we identified as kind of shallower area. It widens out a little bit. Yeah. It is not as deep there. It's probably only 9 to 12 inches. Talked about possibly notching some things in there, the channel to spin and concentrate the flow, but also.
Would that be the 11,640 for the boulder salvaging?
Part of that, those boulders are a lot of the boulders out at the business park. Those boulders would be kind of scattered throughout, to be honest. One of the thoughts would be, we'd like to enhance area up next to, I'll call it there. Between the riffle, the current riffle, which looks pretty nice, and the old bridge or the old dam area, I'd like to add some additional structure there to channelize some flow. And we've got a couple other areas. Riffle in the picture.
That one.
Or that picture. It's got a lot of smaller rocks in there now. I'd like to add some rocks to help channelize that, add some other areas.
Adding those larger rocks, is this going to be navigable?
It'll actually make it more navigable. Right now, especially over that riffle, it gets very shallow. Channelize it to the way we'd like to lay that out is kind of in a pattern such that we're water a little bit interesting, but also put some depth to it.
Andy, I'm very happy to hear that you're trying to accelerate this schedule. My biggest concern when I saw it was that we're coming into the wet time of the season in September, and we already lost the best time we had in the month of July when it was dry. And we need to make sure that this doesn't get delayed into next year.
Yeah, you also don't wanna plant in July because that's real tough to get it going, so we did lose drying weather, okay, but we are going into a better planting season. But I do have to fight with the weather as it does become bad.
Last year, we had discussions about that earlier in the season. You weren't able to navigate that area because it did get too wet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of that's dried out by this point, and even when it does get a little bit of rain, you'll still be able to traverse that area, but I'm happy to hear. Try and accelerate that process.
We are going to.
So if we did proceed forward with the two changes here in the memo, was that any impact on the schedule, or is that already built in?
It shouldn't really impact it that much. That two days worth of work, really, 3 days. They're not gonna stop doing what they're doing to do this. They're gonna get what their portion on that they're digging done, so that way that can start drying out, so they can grade it. And then this is what needs to be done here is part of the restoration, so it has to be done while we're doing the restoration work. So it's not gonna really impact the schedule.
And I guess this would be for you, Tim. Andy Nelson was with you today. Did you talk about the shore restoration area where it does touch the water edge?
Yeah, he had one comment. It's the portion, back up towards the top, maybe I may have a picture. Blankets are down. You can kind of see that on the right-hand picture. I've got some erosion mat down there. His one real comment was he was really happy with how the not that it would happen to be wash out. That was his real comment on that. As far as the plants that were coming up, he suggested some backing down with some weed eating. Annuals that'll grow up, be really strong this year. I was pleased with what he had to say from the standpoint of a lot of what's out there is actually ready as a natural grass. Some of it was pretty encouraging.
Tim, can you address Mr. Cool's question from earlier about what's being planted?
So as far as being the planting side, I'll say the west end is currently both a wetland and an upland prairie mix. The area adjacent to south side of the stream, up near the road, adjacent to the Mill Pond Park, is all turf grass. Now, there's been some question about, do we want to bury some of that? I know there's a couple of properties on the very west end. We were out today. They would actually would prefer some turf grasses and would like to mow some of it. But kind of a question maybe we'd like to get some feedback on.
I think it's also something we would want feedback from the people that live in that area. do plan on having a cow meeting that hopefully, Andy, you can attend at some point.
When?
We don't have that scheduled
Okay.
yet, but I'm guessing it'll probably be in September sometime.
My schedule opens up better then.
Okay, great.
The only challenge with what we're talking about here is he wants to seed sooner than later, so
Yeah.
we have to be a little careful about how much input we seek on what gets seeded where.
I think that the efforts that a lot of the people have been individually putting into those properties makes a lot of sense and should be saved as much as possible. And it doesn't impede your processes.
Well, if we want turf grass, then we would have to switch to that, which probably makes sense for the first section going back to the bend, because a lot of that, or the huge section of that was lawn when we started the project. And somebody actually went out there and started taking care of their own piece already. They kinda roped it off and go around it. I don't wanna damage what they did already. Just probably talk to the people along there so we know what they're looking for, because the preparation for turf grass versus the prairie is different. Prairie wants it kinda a little rough and not real smooth, which isn't gonna be good for mowing.
Those discussions happen. It's something that you'd have to talk to Tim and Jason about, conversations, how they're conducted.
Okay.
Make sure they're involved in those conversations.
I got a question yet on page 3 of the report that, in regards to the wetland scrape at the top.
Yes.
And it said, and I'm just asking because I've heard a lot about cattails in the ongoing project. And it said here that, the shallow area, 6 to 12 inches, is conducive to cattail/wetland growth. I thought the whole idea was that they didn't want cattails.
Correct. That's as a negative, yes. So right now you've got, if you go to the picture, on the, I think it's the last picture, shows that wetland area. You'll see there's some open channel. Yeah, you can see it there on the bottom right. See there's some open water, but also the banks and some of the middle there gets relatively shallow. We were looking at it, said, yeah, cattails are going to naturally on those banks grow there. It's not next to the creek, but they're going to naturally grow there. But talking to Andy today, he said that's just really good fishery vegetation because there's enough depth to it. There's some flow there. His only comment, he said that looks like a nice restoration was done already, was his comment. But he did say the only thing you might want to consider would be digging in a lower area to help the fisheries, help the fish a little bit. Then he concentrated, Andy and I have to talk, we concentrated really on making the outfall such that fish would be able to swim up it.
That was kind of my takeaway from it too, is that's really what we want to concentrate is the outfall of that pond, we'll call it. So I don't know how we're going to, we've got a number here for $4,700, but we really don't want to spend, in my opinion, I don't think we want to spend that money on that at this point. How do we contractually take care of that outfall? I mean, is that an extra or is that part of our contract here?
From what Andy was talking about, adding some stone, I think the stone would be a unit price. I think the rest of it is just shaping would be my take.
Okay, and so the stone would be the second part of the other change we're looking here, the stone would come from the business park for that. Is that what we're thinking?
But we do have a unit price, and we have not used all the unit price for the stone. We'd want some smaller stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, it looked to me like parking a Buick inside a wheelchair corral,
So I think if we go forward with that, maybe what we do is give you authorization to get into the details and agree to a change order not to exceed that here.
The other thing I just want to point out about the rocks we keep talking about in the business park is they're on the property that we're currently negotiating on, so we will have to vacate those either way.
Approve actually starting moving those tomorrow.
Well, with that said, and the need to move the rocks and an opportunity to save some money and make things look better, I will make a motion to authorize a change order for $11,640 to move the rocks and boulders from the business park over, and to authorize DPW director up to $4,700 to got the details on the wetland.
I'll second that.
Right, got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Yeah.
All right, since Scott's got,
All right, moving on. Consideration of drawing beds roof bid acceptance and award. Jason?
Is Tim Pruitt on?
I am indeed.
Okay, so we've got a bit of a unique situation here. In July, I had sent out a request for proposals to replace the asphalt shingle roofs on the drying beds at the wastewater plant. They're 254 by 90 buildings. They're pretty big buildings. They need not only the shingles replaced, they need the plywood replaced, and it's quite an extensive project. And we reached out to 3 contractors. We advertised it, first of all, 2 weeks in the newspaper as a Class 2 project. And then we reached out to 3 different contractors to try to solicit bids. 2 of the contractors responded, came and looked at the project, provided the pre-qualification piece, and then the day before bid opening, we received bid A, and then the day of the bid opening, 5 minutes after 1 o'clock, we received a second bid. So I had a discussion with Tim Pruitt with it. Tim, if you want to chime in on what your thoughts are with where we stand currently.
Sure. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. The village has a lot of discretion when it comes to accepting bids that are technically not in compliance with the bid requirements. The whole statutory bidding requirement scheme is designed to prevent fraud, as well as to make sure that you get the best bang for your buck, best worker supplies at the most reasonable price. The major point the cases make is that you want to make sure that the integrity of the bidding process was not affected. So if somebody's bid was so late and there were questions as to whether or not they had information about the bids that had already been opened, that's a different matter. That's not what we have here. We have a bid that's 5 minutes late, and we asked the contractor to provide an explanation for that. And I believe Jason has received that.
Correct.
There's a second problem. My understanding is that both of the bids were made without putting in the 5% bid bond that was required by statute, and it's required by your instruction to the bidders. So you've got one bid that was late and both bids that did not put in the bid bond. Again, there have been cases where a bid bond has been allowed to be submitted after acceptance of the bid. And again, it's in a situation where there's a good explanation, or we are fairly comfortable that the process itself is still sound and it hasn't been compromised. So I think your options here are, you could say both bidders did not comply with the requirements and we're gonna bid it again. But I do think if you decide to go the other direction, you could decide to award the bid to the lowest responsible bidder, but require them to put in the bid bond immediately.
So explain then that because one contractor was late, it's irrelevant?
It's not irrelevant. I think you need to know why was it late. And if there's a good explanation, you need to be sure that the integrity of the bidding process was not compromised. In this situation, it's a 5-minute delay. There was no gain that was made by the second bidder with the late bid. Under those circumstances, you have the discretion as a municipality to accept that late bid.
I know that just, and in my opinion on this, just thinking through this, we've got 2 people that bid on this. One of them was 5 minutes for their time frame. We've got kind of a responsibility to the people that live in this community to give them the best number. And if we shortfall ourselves by saying, well, 5 minutes caused the citizens $10,000 because maybe that's what it is cheaper, that's shame on us if we did that. So I think that, in my opinion, we open that bid, see which one's the lowest, and that's the one we take and talk about the 5% bond at that point. This is not something that we can let go of. The sheeting is already deteriorating. By next year, with a full winter season cycle in it, maybe falling through and having holes in it, if it's to that point, I wouldn't want to risk that.
Jason, how long ago did we look at that?
I do think that this roof needs to happen before, I mean, it can't go much longer because we're gonna then get into some rotting of rafters and things like that, and then the prices will just go astronomical, so we don't. So we've been talking about this project for 3 years now.
At least.
Yes.
The 5-minute thing doesn't bother me. With the discretion that Tim outlined, that doesn't bother me at all. Have we ever had a situation where we went back to somebody and said, okay, the awarding the contract to you is contingent upon a bid bond?
Not to my knowledge, but I would feel, in this situation, I think that's almost what we'll have to do. If you decide tonight to open the second bid, I would like to talk about potentially award tonight as well, contingent upon, obviously, my review of both bids to make sure they're, equal. And then I think if we're going to do that, then we ask for the bid bonds before we take it further, if that's what you guys choose tonight.
So if we ask you to open the bid, then, lay the remainder of this over to the rest of later in the agenda and come back after you've had a chance to read through it? So I met with one of these contractors on site to look at it. The second contractor did come and look at it and met with Tom, but I didn't get to have a conversation with him. So I would probably feel better meeting with that contractor on site to knowing that they fully grasp the scope that we are after. So I guess essentially if this had to go to the next meeting, I don't think it's a problem, unless that contractor, the apparent low bidder, said, hey, I want to start next week, which I doubt is the case.
Well, and the bid that you have open already could be the lowest bid. You don't know.
Correct.
Oh, and if need be, we can always call a special meeting.
Yeah, because we don't have, our next meeting's not for another month.
Right.
So I'd rather give you the time, and if we need to get on a Zoom call for 5 minutes to approve something, that's fine.
I think that's completely realistic.
I agree that we need to open it to what Scott said. We hold that responsibility to the taxpayer. 5 minutes.
What's the risk to the village if we move forward with opening the bid?
I don't think there's a viable risk here, only because both parties, their bids are deficient. Because they both did not do the bid bond, so they don't have anything to complain about in effect. If one party had fully complied, you're looking at, possible action. If you ended up giving the bid to the other party, the damages are limited to the cost of putting that bid together. And then there might be an injunction sought from a court to require you to award the contract to party A and not B. I don't think we're looking at that at all here. We have a situation where both bids are deficient, and we're choosing to do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers because we're assured under this situation that the integrity of the bidding process was not affected. These are technical deficiencies that I think can be corrected.
So why were they 5 minutes late?
Family emergency.
I'll make a motion to allow DPW to open the second bid.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Already takes it. We'll open.
Okay, I'll read off the first bid. So the first bid was from James R. Taylor. Total bid amount, $199,922.13. Second bid is from Mathers Improvement Specialists. Didn't use our form, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm gonna read the right amount. Grand total, $98,986. $199.
In a bid separation that steep, you definitely have your work cut out for you to make sure it's apples to apples.
So I will go back through, review the two bids, and then, come back to you with my recommendations.
Jason,
And then we can schedule a Zoom meeting or something.
Jason, we did talk, I know one time they were gonna strip the shingles. Remember, we talked about possibly now we know they're gonna have to redo the decking. But
That
then-
was always the plan.
Anyways, my question is that they're probably gonna have to replace a lot of those purlins that are connecting the rafters.
So I included a unit price for that in the bid as well. So they should have provided me that. Bid A had that per 8-foot board to replace it. There's a number in there.
And joist hangers too?
Correct.
Okay.
This includes all joist hangers, where it doesn't currently have joist hangers.
Understood. I guess the only problem that I had, and the reason I voted no, just so everybody can understand this, is that I don't want to get the village on a slippery slope for accepting bids when something's a little skewed, as opposed to just sending it back and bringing it back in another week, if that's the case. But what I don't want to see, and this is for our attorney also, is that if later on down the road, if we deny some contractor for some reason, they can point back to past practice, and then we're going to end up with problems. And that was my only concern.
One quick question for you, Tim. Should I seek a bid bond from both parties or just a parent low at this point?
I think just the parent low, unless you have reason to suspect that it's not a responsible bid.
Okay, thanks. So then I'll bring it back to you guys. Thank you.
Do the bids, Jason, just curious, do the bids give you amounts and square footage or areas or amount that would,
So the request for proposals was based on a lump sum for both units, so no, it's not a square footage.
Bidding apples to apples with the number of square per shingles. If somebody miscalculated or something, there could be a problem with these bids.
I'll
They
have to
could
review
come back
them.
and say, oh, well, we underbid it. And
Cory, that's why we said that he has to compare the two bids. And then we'll figure it out after that, then we'll call the special meeting on a Zoom meeting, computer out. All right, moving on, consideration of staffing request for a part-time seasonal DPW position to be added to the 2023 budget. Anybody have any questions about that?
No, I'd recommend approval of the additional DPW seasonal staff.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I did have a question. Should I use this? Anyways, my question is that I know you've got part-time people out there cutting lawns, and it helps out quite a bit. Once we start accumulating more of these sidewalk areas, like the sidewalk along St. Peter's Road for Lake Bluff, some of the other sidewalks in the municipality, and we're also gonna have that trail now that's gonna go out towards Brookstone and then future down the road out to Honey Creek. My question is then, would it make sense to have somebody as a part-time mower also to do part-time sidewalk clearing?
Possibly, I mean, this is something we can expand on if, you know, the need continues. Currently, staff is able to handle the snow removal, so, but it is something I've considered. So, you know, maybe in 24, we add, you know, some hours onto that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of John's Disposal Service, Inc., proposed 2023 rates and direction to staff regarding possible agreement extension. Does anybody have any questions about this memo?
I'd go forward with a 5-year deal.
I'll second it.
I have a question. Are we gonna actually sign a new contract with them so that it's a little more updated from 2013 that we've had in our files here?
I would like to ask for an updated contract to incorporate the amendments. I also want to bring to the board's attention that 9.7% he gave us was based on the June CPI. And right now, July was lower at 8.6%, still a savings. But, I would like to change that because it's based on the August CPI, but he's got to get it to us by September 1st, and that doesn't even make sense. We don't have August CPI till after. So,
And that was not a motion. I didn't think you needed a motion to negotiate to bring us a contract.
I remove my second then.
It sounded more like an agreement to me.
yeah, I was simply seeking direction at this point, but I'm going to ask for an updated agreement. I just think it's too many amendments at this point, and I'd like it all incorporated into a new agreement.
Matt's point, I think that 5-year extension makes
Add
sense.
something. So the CPI, I know it's 9%, what if it goes into the negative? So next year it goes negative. Notice in the agreement, we don't have anything to adjust the rates down. So if the CPI goes down, is there a,
I highly doubt we're going to get that. When it goes negative, I don't know that their costs
if they're
necessarily
relying
go
on
down.
the CPI, if they're gonna rely on the CPI, they should also rely on the negative side.
I guess, to your point, and I would agree with you, but does the contract set up so that if it does go up, do they get to increase their rates in the lifespan of the contract?
I think it's every September.
Then if that's, you're absolutely right then. If it goes down, it should be.
All right, review of capital budget with revisions from 8/1/22. Board meeting.
I already did my analysis and talked to Eileen. I'm good.
I do have to add the, equalized value is now the final value as of today. So that value that was incorporated, to give us the debt capacity is correct.
Yeah, it was the other thing I was gonna say is that we go up at maximum to 50% of our debt capacity, and then we start working down. And I think the fact that we've got a 23 and a 25 debt issuance, so we've got two big things out for the next good while. We're in good shape debt-wise, as long as prices come up that make us.
As you suspect coming up?
Not to my knowledge currently. Tough question to answer.
Moving on to ordinances and resolutions, ordinance 2022-10, recommendation from Planning Commission for approval to amend the zoning code regarding driveway standards and off-street parking design requirements and other matters. Application 2022-26.
I'd move to approve ordinance 2022-10.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. On to reports, July financial report. Any questions?
What happened to our property insurance?
They changed some, sorry, I didn't mean to be, I wasn't trying to be
That's all right.
sarcastic.
No, please do that.
No, the property values were adjusted, so the value of our property
got it.
went up.
How about the Park and Rec minutes from 6/13? Planning Commission minutes from 8/8?
I was gonna ask Park and Rec what the total cost of that new pier was, because I didn't.
We have not gotten bids yet.
Any questions for the Planning Commission from 8/8? The Library Board minutes from 7/12 and special minutes from 7/19. So then I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985-1E for the purpose of conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons required a closed session, development agreement. Roll call?
President Seeger.
Yes.
Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Johnson.
Yes.
Trustee Nugent. Yes. Trustee Renucci.
Yes.
Trustee Smalley. Yes. Trustee Wisniewski.
Yes.